It's my nerd world, and welcome to it. I'm your host, Jon Justice. Before we get going this week, I want to say Happy Mother's Day to Shmi, to Padme, to Leia, and to all the mothers out there on this Mother's Day. I hope that you had a fantastic day, which is rightly devoted to you. And to Leia, don't worry about it. Your son, Ben, totally getting redeemed in the Rise of Skywalker, so don't even sweat it. All right, on the show this week, we'll talk a little Rise of Skywalker, of course, and why you need to really take advantage of these next 8 months. So everybody started to freak out when we got this list of upcoming releases from Disney, and suddenly everybody became an expert on what Disney is planning on doing. I'm no exception. I'm going to present, though, a very sort of rational, fact-based commentary on what the release schedule for Disney means, especially when it comes to the Star Wars films. That'll be the core of the show this week. I do have a couple of questions that I want to present to you, something that came up this week when it comes to the sequel trilogy. We'll dive into a couple of those issues. A lot of listener feedback, as always. And then something different for the show. We won't do it every single show, but we will have an after show. My Nerd World after show after a Star Wars podcast is wrapped up. This will provide an opportunity for me to talk about a few things movie-related, book-related, not related directly to Star Wars. And I want to talk a little Avatar in the after show this week. So that'll make up, this week's show. So I've talked enough for the intro. Let's go ahead and make it official on this Mother's Day recording of a Star Wars podcast.
We've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight. We'll always be with you. No one's ever really gone.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you?
I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My Nerd World.
Just let it in.
Enjoy these next 8 months. I mean, really enjoy these next 8 months. Welcome to the show, and really been looking forward to doing this. I'm looking forward to the show, to doing the show every single week. But this one, we have some interesting things to go and cover, and different than what we've talked about in the past several episodes. So I'm excited to get into the future of Star Wars films, especially with this out-of-nowhere release schedule that Disney dropped this week that has basically turned the fandom on its head and cracks me up. And look, I'm guilty of this too, but it makes me laugh when every title... And even for this one, for this podcast, when every title for every podcast and every show suddenly turns into this, I know what they're going to do. I know whose trilogy this is. Rian Johnson, his trilogy's dead. It's like, well, everybody needs to lighten the hell up. You don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on. Speculate all you want, but you don't know what's going on. Quit acting like you are. And it drives me nuts when I listen to a couple of shows and they'll label it like, you know, the Benioff and Weiss trilogy. It's like, ooh, they have inside information. And then you go and listen and it's a bunch of, yeah, but ifs. Well, if it's theirs. You know, I want to talk about this, but I want to talk about it from the perspective of what we know and then provide some rational commentary to what I anticipate is going to happen with this upcoming release schedule. Okay, so taking everything at face value, let's just talk about the knowns. When it comes to looking forward to these next 8 months and why I started the show off that way. What do we know? We know that we're going to get The Mandalorian later this year. We know that we're going to get this epic conclusion to the Skywalker saga with Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. We know that Ben Solo is going to get redeemed. Okay, we don't know that for sure. It's a pretty healthy bet. Okay, we know that we're going to get another Mandalorian Season 2 next year. We're going to get another Clone Wars, wrapping up the Clone Wars series. And I really hope, if you watch the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars cartoon, which I just love, man, there's so much essence of Star Wars in those 2 seasons of the Clone Wars that was the testament. They're not canon, but man, I've mentioned it before, I'll say it again. If you have not watched those 2D animated series, that is such great Star Wars. I mean, it's up there with my favorite stuff from the Clone Wars regular, 3D animated series. But we know we're going to get a wrap up to that, and I really hope that they do what they did in the Genndy Tartakovsky series, because they brought it right up to Revenge of the Sith, and I hope that Dave Filoni does that with the Clone Wars series. We know we're getting a Cassian Andor series, okay? And then, all that we know so far is what Disney has told us. And I'm going to get into this. But we know that we're every other year, beginning in 2022, we're going to be getting a Star Wars movie. And everybody is presuming that is going to be a trilogy. And I'm not saying it's not. That's all we know. We know that we're getting 3 films, starting in 2022, and then every other year after that. Okay, so that being said, before I dive into my commentary and what I personally believe is possible of happening, I just want to encourage you to enjoy the next 8 months, because as of right now, it's going to be a long time before we're going to be in this spot right here. It's going to be many years, relatively speaking, that we're going to be 8 months out from a major Star Wars motion picture at the moment. I do believe that can change at the moment. Okay. So however you want to take the next 8 months, do it. Right? Things that you get to look forward to. We have a Vanity Fair photo shoot that we should be getting this month. I didn't realize it was going to be happening so soon, but they're absolutely right. I've collected all the Vanity Fairs, and they come out in May. I love the Vanity Fair profiles for what they are. I'm big into the canon of the stories. I want to absorb and take everything in that is directly lifted from the source material. So the Vanity Fair stuff doesn't fall into that category because these are photographs shot by Annie Leibovitz, and so these aren't actually taken from the film. They do provide a lot of insight, and they are beautiful photographs that she's done. She's an amazing photographer. But it's a different level, right? So you can look forward to the Vanity Fair piece, and we should get that either this coming week or next week. Look forward to Force Friday. And we're getting Mandalorian and Rise of Skywalker stuff. I am jacked for the Rise of Skywalker toys. I am convinced that we're going to be getting some rad Star Wars toys for the Rise of Skywalker. If Kylo Ren's TIE silencer is any indication, and I'm looking at it right now. I've got every version of the TIE silencer from the Last Jedi that they made. This newer version, that's kind of a combination of Kylo Ren's TIE silencer and a TIE interceptor. With the red on it, I just think looks fantastic. I love the aesthetic of the First Order. That black and that red and that kind of silver and white, I really, really dig that. And I cannot wait to get my hands on the physical version and the toy version of Kylo Ren's new TIE silencer. And I heard somebody make an interesting observation as to why. I mean, I don't really need an explanation. We got a time jump, and who wouldn't want a new car? Right? Certainly not Kylo Ren. He's Supreme Leader now, after all. Be that as it may, I heard somebody make a good point that, maybe his TIE silencer bit the dust when Holdo pulled off her Holdo maneuver. right? So maybe that's when it got destroyed. Okay, that works. If he just went and got the latest model, I'm fine with that too. I think the more practical reason why he has a new TIE silencer, I think, is directly related to that particular scene. I don't think that TIE silencer makes it past that scene. I'm of the opinion right now where I think that Rey is, I think that's a standoff. I think Rey is gonna fly over the top of that thing and lightsaber a wing off, and he's gonna have to face her face to face. And how in the world is Ben Solo not going to succumb to that face, for crying out loud? All right, and I think that from a practical standpoint, it made more sense for her to flip over the ball cockpit than the elongated body of the original TIE silencer. Okay, I'm getting into the weeds, but that's what I do on the show. So Force Friday you have to look forward to. The Entertainment Weekly profiles are always fantastic. Podcasts, right? Enjoy all the podcasts you can. Take it all in. It's going to be, again, it is going to be a long, this is the last time for this series that we're ever going to, every day leading up to the Rise of Skywalker is sort of, as a fan, a big deal. If you celebrate this like I do, right, this is your opportunity to just take advantage of it, man. Live in the moment and just absorb it all. Now, hopefully, and I'm trusting that Lucasfilm and the content creators are able to duplicate, and we'll get into this, because this is what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to duplicate what the Skywalker saga did when it comes to the mythology to get us all where we are right now, to get me where I am right now, invested in these characters in these films. Now, I'm convinced that they can do it because they did it. We're not talking about the mythology of Skywalker anymore. Luke, Han, and Leia, to a lesser extent. We're talking about the backgrounds of Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, Rey Nobody, Finn and Poe. They've already been able to expand on the stories, the characters, and the mythology to get us all to care. Now, if we're going to a brand new set of films with a whole other set of mythology, that thread that keeps us all interested in this particular series of movies, these 9 films, gets much thinner. So they're going to have to come up with something that we're all going to be able to gravitate towards, attach ourselves to, and to care about as much as we did these first 9 films. Now, I also believe that they got a great group of people in Rian Johnson and in Benioff and Wise and in the story group and guys like Dave Filoni who are definitely going to be, and J.J. Abrams, right, who are definitely going to be able to do just that. Okay, so again, right now we're keeping with the theme of enjoy it while we got it, because it's going to be a while until we get it again. And then the trailers, of course, come October. However, whatever makes you, brings you the most Star Wars joy. And if that's spoilers, then don't fight it. Right? Don't fight it. I don't really fight spoilers. And the reason I don't fight spoilers is there's a certain level that I'd like to go into a Star Wars film and enjoy it for the first time. But, like, if I were to cut myself off, and it's just not really in the cards because of the show that I do, but let's just say that I did. If I were to cut myself off right now from the pages that put out really good leaked information about the Rise of Skywalker, sure, I'm going to have a fantastic time, an amazing time, and an amazing experience seeing the Rise of Skywalker for the first time without any preconceived ideas of what goes down in the story. And it'll be amazing, and then I'll walk out going, oh my gosh, that was great, and then I'm going to come down from my high. That's great for some people. Not for who's got 2 thumbs, and it's not for that guy. This guy. No, for this guy, right? No, man, I want to enjoy every single day leading into December for the next 8 months, and that means that, yeah, man, I want to talk about it. I want to know what's supposed to happen in this movie. This is fun for me, right? This gives me my dopamine kick. I like this. That's me, though, okay? And I think it's for you for the most part because you're listening to this show. So I don't mind going into it because guess what? I'm going to be watching this movie all over and over and over again, just like I do The Last Jedi. It won't make any difference after that first screening. But you do whatever it is that you need to do to enjoy it. And I wanted to start off the show this week and just encourage you to really enjoy these next 8 months. There will be a time again, but I don't think that it's going to be like this when it comes to The Mandalorian. And that's not a bad thing. I'm just being a realist when it comes to this stuff. I don't think it's going to, happen when it comes to the Cassian Andor series. I do think there are some options that could bring it about sooner, this feeling and this speculation and this fun ride that we're all on right now. But if the known is all that it is, then we won't be where we are now for, a handful of years. So take advantage of it. Enjoy it, man. Celebrate. Every day is celebration. Celebrate your fandom all the way to December. I'm so excited. I've got my dad and my stepmom coming here to Minneapolis in December to watch this. I'm going to tear up just thinking about it. To watch this last movie. And it just, man, I can't even express, right? If you could see me right now, I do. My eyes are welling up. My father, unbeknownst to him, he was the dude who did this to me, right? My father and my mother, okay? My mother fostered my collecting desire. I'll give her due credit. She's an amazing woman on this Mother's Day. She was really that person in my life prior to the divorce and after the divorce, but certainly prior to my parents getting divorced, who, really fostered this childlike wonder that I still have today of collecting and enjoying things and getting those first run Star Wars toys at a young age. And I remember, going to the dentist and getting my first carded C-3PO and R2-D2, the first action figures. I still have them. They're still in the box in my collection of toys. But my dad was the one who took me to the theater in El Monte, California, to see Star Wars on the big screen for the first time. And I was 5 years old, and I remember it. I was 5 years old, and I can picture the theater in my mind and how square the screen was and how gray the room was and how it's just so different than the theaters that we have today. And the trench run, right? That's what started it all. My dad's going to come here to see this final story in the Skywalker saga in December, man. It's just it means everything, and I'm going to enjoy every day leading up to that. Holy cow! Can you imagine if you're like if you're J.J. Abrams? Are you thinking about that? You got to be, right? You've got to be. You have got to be aware of just what a burden has been placed upon you for this final film. Oh, so. Again, I took the first almost 20 minutes of the show, and I don't care. I got no shame. Just encouraging you to just enjoy it. Enjoy the ride while it lasts, man. Whatever it is. And don't be ashamed of it. Right? Don't. Watch the documentaries. Listen to the commentaries. Watch the movies as much as you want. Get your toys out. Rearrange them. Dust it off. Go out and purchase that cabinet that you've been wanting to buy for to put your Star Wars toys in so you don't have to go and dust them all the time like I do, because I haven't done that yet. Right? Enjoy time with your family. Expose people that have never been exposed to Star Wars before. Find somebody who doesn't know these films and try to get them sucked in so that they can enjoy this ride along with you leading into this final film. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And it was really this release schedule that Disney put out that put me down this path. That really, because I wasn't quite there yet. I was there, but I wasn't there. And when Disney put this release schedule out, that we're not going to get another Star Wars movie in the theater, at least right now, I think that can change. At least right now, until 2022, I was like, whoa, I better start really taking advantage of this. All right, let's go ahead and dive into it.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Now, those words mean a lot. in a lot of different ways, because Luke's right. I don't think this is going to go the way that we think. I don't think that this schedule is the end-all, be-all. I don't think that the schedule is is set in stone. I want to get my analogies right. I don't think the schedule is set in stone. Okay, and I don't think that this trilogy is what everybody thinks that it is. Okay, this is my speculation. All right. So real quick promotion, want to mention, don't forget, leave a comment on YouTube as we work through the podcast. I'll read your emails and your commentary and your comments from YouTube every week on the show. I pull out as many as I can. You can always email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Two quick things, and then we'll dive into this too. A little bit of confusion last week when I mentioned having a video version of the show. A lot of people thought that I meant doing it live. I didn't mean doing it live. My thought was, what if I video recorded the show when I recorded the podcast and put up a video version of the show at the same time on YouTube that I put up the podcast? That's what I was referring to. So if you want to go ahead and let me know what you think about that. Basically, it would be a video version of what I'm doing now. You'd just be able to see me doing it. It would not be live, so you wouldn't have to worry about seeking it out when it happened live. That's what I meant. Also, just want to mention, and I'll get into this in the after show this week for my Nerd World, that if you want to support this podcast and you haven't done so already, either for you or a friend, please go to Amazon.com and pick up either an audio version, a paperback version, or an ebook version for just $2.99 of my science fiction space opera Embark. And I'll give you some details about that later on in the show. I got my first beta reader responses for book 2, Embark, Treasure in Darkness, and I'm ecstatic over the responses that I've gotten so far. The story worked. I'm really, really excited. So I just want to, again, encourage everybody, if you haven't purchased the book yet, for you and a friend, I hope you'll support my podcast, My Nerd World, by going and purchasing a copy of my book. It would really mean a lot to me. All right. So I'm looking at the article I just picked up this one from IO9, from Gizmodo. The Star Wars saga returns in 2022, and it's sharing some time with Pandora. And again, I'm going to talk about Avatar in the after show this week. Disney just revealed a bunch of new release dates, with the highlight being that 3 new yet-to-be-titled Star Wars movies will be released every other December starting in 2022. In the years in between, Disney will release the new James Cameron Avatar movies, since the company now owns that franchise as well. That starts in 2021. Okay, so they put out an official press release. What we have here is, so in 21, 23, 25, and 27, you get Avatar 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then in 2022, 24, and 26, we get untitled Star Wars movies. There's no indication that these Star Wars films are a new trilogy, or any of the previously teased films. They may be, but they may not be either. We'll have to wait and see. So they released a full press release, and let's just get to the part that's relevant. The updated calendar sets release dates for major franchises, Avatar and Star Wars, with Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker bringing the original Skywalker saga to its conclusion. 3 new, as-yet untitled Star Wars films will release on the pre-Christmas weekend every other year beginning in 2022. Okay? 4 forthcoming Avatar films expanding the vibrant world of Pandora will release on pre-Christmas every other weekend beginning in 2021. In the holiday corridor for 2020, Fox's West Side Story adaptation, directed by Steven Spielberg, will debut December 18th, 2020, in the pre-Christmas slot, with Disney's Cruella opening up December 23rd for the long weekend. Okay, so why did I do the dramatic pause? I did the dramatic pause because of something rather relevant in that press release, and something rather relevant that happened this week. Fox's West Side Story adaptation, directed by Steven Spielberg. Now, you may or may not know this, but Steven Spielberg was once on the list to direct a Star Wars film, and he never did. That you probably knew. Do you really think that if Steven Spielberg had the opportunity to direct a Star Wars film, that he wouldn't jump at that chance? Now, here's where it gets more interesting, and the story gets a little bit more compelling. Bob Iger just gave a tour of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland, California, to some of his closest friends. Who were those friends? Well, not surprisingly, Kathleen Kennedy was there. Not surprisingly, J.J. Abrams was there. Not all that surprising, however, so was Steven Spielberg. Okay, first off, the reality of what Disney's schedule really means, okay, and what is most likely. First off, no offense to everybody else who's extrapolating on this, because I'm doing it too, but be that as it may, nobody knows what in the Sam heck is going on, and neither do I. So anybody that says that they do, they're full of it. There's been people out there saying, the Rian Johnson trilogy's dead, he's not doing him anymore. A lot of people are extrapolating, this is going to be the Benioff and Weiss trilogy, and therefore, Rian Johnson's going to have to wait until 2028 before he starts his movie? No, his trilogy's dead. Listen, I'm telling you, nobody knows what's going on. Let's follow what's happened. When Benioff and Weiss were slated to direct a series of movies, we didn't have Solo yet. When Rian Johnson was announced to direct a trilogy set some other time in some other place at a brand new world, blah, 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 we didn't have Solo yet. Solo changed everything. This stuff is fluid and it changes all the time. Okay? So, let's take a scenario where I'll remove the Steven Spielberg element from this for just a moment. I'll bring it back in here in a second, but let's remove this for just a moment. Kathleen Kennedy did say recently that they were looking at the Knights of the Old Republic. She said this in an interview with one of the dudes from MTV, that is something that they were looking at. Look, they're looking at all kinds of stuff. They've been looking at all kinds of stuff. There was some story that was supposed to be based out of Mos Eisley spaceport, right? That didn't come to fruition. There was going to be an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie they were getting ready to announce. That's why Ewan McGregor was at the Solo premiere. That didn't come to fruition. Look, there's been, how many different directors have worked through these films? Disney and Lucasfilm can change their minds all the time. Okay? I think at the time they thought, we're going to do a series of movies and probably intermix them and change them. We're going to have 2 movies a year. We'll do a Benioff and Weiss trilogy or a series of movies. It's going to be whatever it's going to be. And then we'll do the Rian Johnson ones. But look, all this stuff is fluid. What do we know now? We know that Rian Johnson and Benioff and Weiss were getting together with Kathleen Kennedy to discuss the future of Star Wars and that they were now collaborating together. Okay? None of these films are dead. Rian Johnson said they were still moving forward. I think he's a big part of this. We also know that Rian Johnson was recently with Pablo Hidalgo from the Story Group going to see a series of plays that a lot of people have been speculating on that's going on at the Met right now that might be some sort of indication of where Rian Johnson's movies might be going, and we honestly don't know. Let me double back to the Kathleen Kennedy and Knights of the Old Republic thing for just a moment. I do think that Disney will eventually spend some time in the Knights of the Old Republic. Here's my issue with doing anything like a series of movies based on the Knights of the Old Republic, okay? My issue that I have with that is not that I don't want it as a fan. However, I'm 46 years old. The part of the fandom that is clamoring for a Knights of the Old Republic style series of films going back to Sith and early Jedi, that part of the fandom is shrinking and getting older, and it's not going to be the future of Star Wars. The future of Star Wars right now is being cultivated with stuff like the Resistance cartoons and the Galaxy of Adventure cartoons and the Lego cartoons. Lucasfilm is doing a very good job of making sure they're cultivating the fandom. Now, again, that's not to say they wouldn't do a series of Knights of the Old Republic films. I don't know what their data is showing them about what the audience wants. What I do know is that right now we're at a place where the audience has accepted a new slate of characters moving forward in this timeline. For me personally, just my opinion, it makes more sense to continue to move forward in that timeline. It makes a heck of a lot more sense to, if we're going to be waiting until 2022, it makes a lot more sense to bring back perhaps a 10, 11, and 12 and continue the saga films, just not attached to the Skywalkers. That makes the most sense to me. Let's move forward. We're going to be spending middle ground time within the timeline that we already have gotten used to with the Mandalorian series, which takes place right after Return of the Jedi. The Cassian Andor series, which takes place between Episode 3 and Episode 4. We're going to have that on the Disney streaming service. So it makes more sense that this new set of films is something that continues forward in the timeline and builds brand new characters, and we're not jumping around anymore. And to me, that's where Steven Spielberg comes in. There's also this little nugget in there, or this little piece of the puzzle that hasn't been solved yet either, and that piece of the puzzle is J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams has been looking to attach himself to a movie studio where he can become sort of the czar, the Svengali, where he can be involved in not just creating stories and world building and universes, but also be involved in the intellectual property, the IP beyond that, like theme parks. So here's a what-if scenario. What if that deal is almost done? What if they know they've got a hit on their hands with the Rise of Skywalker? And what if they know that J.J. Abrams is going to be the next lead at Lucasfilm? Kathleen Kennedy's contract will be expiring sometime in the near future. And if I'm not mistaken, it expires before that first movie drops in 2022. It would make all the sense in the world that J.J. Abrams would be the one to go and take over her spot and be the one to helm these stories moving forward, especially if they know that they've got a massive hit on their hands with The Rise of Skywalker, if this movie delivers in ways that you and I haven't even imagined yet. And what if they just happen to bring in Steven Spielberg to go and kick off this whole new set of films? Getting back to Rian Johnson and the Benioff and Weiss guys for just a second. This makes sense too. And this is where my head was at initially before I started to play with this idea of Steven Spielberg potentially being involved. And again, that's pure speculation on my part, just based off the information that I have here in front of me. But Spielberg, again, doing that movie for Fox, which is now owned by Disney, it's right next door now. It's the same company. Okay. And this J.J. Abrams component as well, because he has not announced what studio he's going to end up going to. So let's set those toys off on the shelf for just a moment, and let's bring in the action figures of Benioff and Weiss and the action figure of Ron Bergman and Rian Johnson, the director and producer of The Last Jedi. Okay, first off, I'll say it again. If you don't like The Last Jedi, that's fine. I do. And I think that Disney's happy with it too. Okay. What I could imagine them doing is, on the streaming service, Benioff and Weiss go and do what Benioff and Weiss go and do. Despite your feelings on the last season of Game of Thrones, which I have not been all that thrilled with. It makes more sense to me that if they're going to do a Knights of the Old Republic, that they go and they put that on the streaming service. And it makes the most sense to me that if they're going to do the Knights of the Old Republic on the streaming service, that they have Benioff and Weiss be the guys to go and helm that. And if Benioff and Weiss are working with Rian Johnson, then it also makes a heck of a lot of sense that Rian Johnson, working in conjunction with them, is developing that next trilogy that starts in 2022. And that his working with Benioff and Weiss means that they're going to try to bridge the two together. Whatever they would do in the Knights of the Old Republic on the streaming service would have ramifications and implications for what this new set of trilogies would be way, way ahead in the timeline. That, to me, would make a really interesting, neat, and rad concept of connecting everything together. You'll have the 9 saga movies that sit there right in the middle that have established all the ground rules. We'll get a new set of movies that take place after 9, with a new set of characters, or maybe the characters we already know. Kathleen Kennedy did say they were talking about films that would have our stars in them of Rey, Finn, and Poe, right? And I think Ben Solo could still be a part of that, but she's not going to say that back then because that would have been basically, broadcasting what was going to happen to Ben Solo, because Leia, he's getting redeemed. Happy Mother's Day. But then you can bookend it and start bringing everything together. Okay, so here's how everything really started with Knights of the Old Republic, and maybe there's a threat or an element in those pre-Phantom Menace stories that are developed for this Disney streaming service that directly relate to this new set of films. That makes sense as well. Bob Iger said that there would not be any movies for the Disney streaming service, that he was going to reserve those tentpole films for the movie theaters. That can change. Right? That can change. And everything changed. They were still planning on doing 2 movies a year before Solo. And I know that a lot of people are saying this is an overreaction to what Solo did, and they shouldn't be doing this. And look, I'm as bummed doing that thing with my fingers as the next person. But we're also getting a lot of Star Wars content. So it's not like if this movie starting in 2022 is just the end-all be-all. I think that this is also still all very fluid. I really do. If you look at the calendar, and I won't bring it up here, but if you look at the calendar that they put out, there are open slots in May leading into 2022, in 2020, and in 2021. And in 2022, there are open May slots for untitled live-action Disney films. If The Rise of Skywalker is a massive, massive hit, I think there's every possibility that they change this around. I think there's every possibility that they could be very far down the line already in pre-production for one of these, and they just haven't announced it yet. Let's take, for example, StarWarsNewsNet.com had put out a really extensive report where they were sure that there was a movie that was Star Wars film that was in production, that there was already art being created. They were well into the development process, and I was convinced at the time, before we got any of this stuff prior to Celebration, that there was going to be an announcement at Celebration that there was a movie in the works that was currently, they would maybe even announce the cast that would be released at the end of 2020. And that didn't happen. I was really convinced that was going to be the case. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that there is. Maybe they've got something in development. Maybe they're really far into development. But they're just like, okay, what do we know as Lucasfilm and what do we know as Disney for sure that we're going to do? We'll tell the fans we're going to put a pause on everything. Pump the brakes. Okay? And I think there's another reason for this too. We're going to pump the brakes. We're going to take a pause. They said this is Celebration. We are all kind of like, oh, they're going to be pausing. Okay. All right. They're going to be focused. All right, well, I better really, like I started the whole show out with, we better really take advantage of these next 8 months. They're going to be taking a pause. Well, that pause just means the Skywalker saga, right? We'll still get a movie, in 2021. And then, okay, so Star Wars Celebration passes, and then you wait a couple of weeks, and then we get this information here. Suddenly now we're not getting a movie until 2022? What was the reaction to that? The reaction to the 2022 next Disney movie was met with excitement. We're getting another trilogy starting in 2022, but people like me and a lot of others were like, whoa, we got a what? You mean we got to go through all of 2020 and then 2021? I got to wait 3 years? 3 years and 8 months? Holy cow. Boy, I'm really glad there's a Star Wars movie coming out this December. So here's another one for you. How much of this release schedule, right? When you look at the 19 and 20 list of movies, they're almost full. But when you get further into what they released, it gets real thin. All you're looking at when it comes to 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27 is just Star Wars and Avatar movies. They don't list anything else. Why did they do that? They did that because we have a movie coming out this December. And they want everybody as hyped up for that film. And how can you hype up a film any more than you already have? Think about it. How do you hype up The Rise of Skywalker as the final installment of the Skywalker 9-movie arc after a movie like The Last Jedi, where a portion of the fandom was incredibly upset? How do you bring the hype machine to 11? This goes to 11. How do you do that? You tell the world that this is the last movie they're getting for 3 years. It's brilliant. Can it change? Of course it can. Of course it can. I think that this releasing of the schedule, right, they know for sure they're going to have movies in 22, 23, and 24. Or 22, 24, and 26. They probably have a pretty good idea of what those movies are going to be. Does that mean they can't do anything in between? No. But, we know we're going to give them a trilogy, and we're going to release them every other year. But let's not tell them anything else. Let's get them all just thinking that they're not going to get any new big screen Star Wars movies for 3 years. That's a really, really good way to pump up the final Star Wars film that they're going to be able to see in the cinema that comes out 8 months from now. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm not, worried. I wasn't worried to begin with, but I don't think anything is set in stone. I think we're getting these films in 22, 24, and 26. Nobody's talking about why they bumped Avatar 2 for another year. Okay? Nobody has mentioned that so far. I think, and I'm looking at it right now. When you look at 2020 in December, you've got Untitled Disney Animation November 25th, West Side Story, Fox Amblin, December 18th, and then Cruella, December 23rd, and that's it. And that's where Avatar was supposed to be. So they moved Avatar to 2021, didn't explain why. No explanation for that. Not going to give us a Star Wars movie until 2022, which, as I've demonstrated, hypes up the Rise of Skywalker. But if the Rise of Skywalker is a massive hit, what if they have a movie in production that's well under production? And maybe they get an announcement at the end of this year or the beginning of next year that actually we do have a Star Wars movie coming at the end of 2020. I think it's possible. I really, really do. I don't think this is done by any stretch. We still, and here's the other thing too. One more little nugget in here. Okay, just play with this stuff. And I really want to know what you guys think. talkshownerd@gmail.com or leave a comment on YouTube. Again, talkshownerd@gmail.com. But look in between everything. What were we all surprised by at the end of Celebration last month? They're doing another celebration. What? In 2020? In Anaheim? And what are we hearing now about that? It's not taking place in April. It's probably taking place in August. Well, what are they going to be promoting? Right? You can do a celebration without having a major Star Wars release, right? Of course you can. Of course you can. But that does seem a little odd. Why wouldn't you wait? Why wouldn't you wait until 2021? Because by 2021, you do a celebration, and hey, then you can talk about the movie coming up in 2022. You won't get a trailer for it, but we can do casting, we can get a timeline. So in August of 2020, I suppose we could get all the details of that, but what if there actually is a movie in the pipeline? And they're just holding it. They don't want to let everybody know. They don't want to take any focus off the Rise of Skywalker. And we know that's true. We know that's true. The focus is the Rise of Skywalker. So let's wait. Let's wait. We'll tell them we're getting a movie in 2022. We'll get everybody talking about a movie that we don't give any information about whatsoever. In the meantime, we'll give a tour to Galaxy's Edge of Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg is now under the Disney umbrella because of his work on the West Side Story with Fox. That could potentially mean he could do a Star Wars movie, maybe in 2022. But what about that report of the other film being worked on? And what if it is still being worked on? And what if it is one of the Benioff and Weiss movies or the Rian Johnson movie? I'm telling you, we have not gotten the full story on this yet. We have not gotten the complete picture, and Disney is holding on to something. Because really, there is no real good reason to pause that long for a franchise as popular as Star Wars. The only good reason is to tell everybody that they're doing it, just to get everybody going, oh, they're going to wait. Oh, my gosh. Wow, I better really enjoy these next 8 months. Okay, you get the picture. What do you think? talkshownerd@gmail.com. And again, leave a comment on YouTube. Really, really curious to know what you think about all of this. And all of it, too. J.J. Abrams, is he going to end up going to Disney and Lucasfilm? Is he going to be the creative figurehead for the Star Wars future? Do you think there's anything to Steven Spielberg doing West Side Story for Fox, touring Galaxy's Edge with Bob Iger and J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy? He was supposed to do a Star Wars movie years ago, but he couldn't get out of his contract for the films that he was working on at the time with George Lucas. As a matter of fact, I think he was supposed to do Phantom Menace. Or it might have been Return of the Jedi. You can clarify for me. I won't Google it. You let me know. Right? And then what do you think about the... And again, I'm tossing out what was announced before. Those announcements of Benny... We know Benioff and Weiss and Rian Johnson are working together. That's all that we know for sure now. What they were talking about a long time ago, about a series of films and Rian Johnson trilogies, I think you could toss that out the window. That was all before Solo changed everything and they made a decision to go a different way. All right. So let me know. What do you think? talkshownerd@gmail.com or leave a comment on YouTube. All right. Let's go ahead and move over to some story stuff. And I have some questions for you guys.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special.
My nerd world.
All right, so I have a legitimate story question for you guys. Not this past weekend, but last weekend I watched The Last Jedi again, and I don't know what your experience is and how often you watch these movies. Sometimes the experiences are different than others, and so much of it really just depends on, where things are going on in the world apart from Star Wars in my life. But watching The Last Jedi again last weekend was just another one of these just amazing experiences of watching this film. And just sitting there, lights off, I think it was actually, I watched it kind of during the day into the evening, watching it start to finish, and just enjoying every single frame of that movie. I remember it finished, and it was, again, getting my dopamine hit. I was just like, man, God, that's just such a great piece of cinema and such fantastic Star Wars. Really enjoyed it. And told myself I was going to take a little bit of time before I watched it again. The question I had for you, though, is where do you land on Snoke and the Force Skype? I heard somebody bring it up on another show this past week. Can't remember which one it was. But it might have been, I don't remember who it was. I listened to quite a few this week. But Snoke makes the comment that he bridged the minds of Kylo and Rey, and then of course at the end of the film they connected again. And the person had suggested that Snoke picked up on the fact that the Force was connecting Rey and Ben, and then he just took credit for it. And so the taking credit for it was revealed at the end when they Force connected without Snoke's help. Knowing what we know potentially about the Rise of Skywalker, I think would lend more evidence to Snoke taking credit for it, knowing that it was happening, that the Force was actually bridging Kylo Ren and Rey, and then Snoke picked up on it and decided that he was going to be the one to go and say, well, I'm going to tell them that I did it, right? Because he's just a socket wrench that way. I don't know if you know what a socket wrench is, but it's a tool, and Snoke was a tool. And look, I think it works either way. Especially if we're thinking about this, and looking at it through the Reylo lens of rose tinted heart shaped glasses, which I am, because that's how I am. It works either way, right? Snoke taking advantage of it, or Snoke being the one to start it, to open up, like he opened up the Wi-Fi connection and it just didn't break. But I wanted to know what you think. I imagine, I'm going to guess that most of you are going to say that he was, he was taking credit for it, and it was the Force connecting them, and I think that makes a lot of sense too. Maybe there's a piece of canon material that I'm not aware of that explains that further. So please, talkshownerd@gmail.com and leave a comment on YouTube and let me know the Force Skype. Did Snoke do any of it? Or did he just take credit for it? The other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly is somebody had put together a little one sheet, and Joseph Campbell back in 1949, when he laid out the hero's journey, Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. I thought this was really, really interesting. So in Act 1, you get the departure. And then there's 5 points, right? You get the call to adventure, the refusal of the call, supernatural aid, crossing the threshold, belly of the whale. That's Act 1. Act 2, you get the road of trials, the meeting with the goddess, woman as temptress, atonement with the father, apotheosis, and the ultimate boon. We're at 11. Okay, so that's in Act 2, the initiation. And then in Act 3, you get the return. You get 12, which is the refusal of the return, the magic of the flight, rescue from without, the crossing of the return threshold, master of two worlds, freedom to live. So that is the hero's journey in 1, 2, and 3. What I thought was really interesting was they took the Campbell hero's journey and they, rightly so, took Act 1 and 2 of Departure and Initiation and attached that to episodes 4, 5, and 6 because it fits almost perfectly. Here's where it gets funny, though. You get 7 in there, and it doesn't have the hero's journey. Like, Episode 7, The Force Awakens, becomes a prologue. Because when you get to 8, you get Act 3, The Return, in The Last Jedi. The refusal of the return, the magic of the flight, the rescue from without, the crossing of the return threshold, master of two worlds, and the freedom to live. And Episode 8, The Last Jedi, fits that to a T when it comes to Luke Skywalker. But what doesn't fit is Episode 7. Okay. I don't, and let me be clear here, I don't think that J.J. Abrams was following that, and I don't think that he needed to. Right? We know about Joseph Campbell because of George Lucas and his admiration for Campbell's work and how he wanted to design his movies and his story based off the hero's journey, which he did. And he covered Act 1 and Act 2 of Departure and Initiation in A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. We also know that he was planning on doing, right, a 7, 8, and 9, and he probably would have completed that. And I think this is also, and I'm getting real deep here, and I don't want to wipe out too much, but I think this is also one of the reasons why people do have, probably on a subconscious level, such a hard time with The Last Jedi, because we were used to the storytelling being a certain way, and Episode 7, not necessarily by design, but kind of inadvertently turned it on its head, because we didn't have Luke in the story at all, so it becomes kind of a prologue. What I'm driving at is that Episode 8 actually becomes Episode 7. Episode 8 is actually a sequel to Episode 6. The Last Jedi is more of a sequel to Return of the Jedi when it comes to Luke's story than Episode 7 is. And I think on a subconscious level, that didn't sit well with a lot of people. The setup of Luke Skywalker and him being absent from Episode 7 and raising the stakes of his return fully after all these years and making everybody wait in Episode 8 lent itself to an abundance of criticism from a portion of the fandom that had more time to go and form in their head the way that Luke was supposed to be. I remember going into Episode 7 and people saying, if they really do, spoiler alert, only introduce Luke at the end of Episode 7, I'm never watching Star Wars again. There were people, when that word came out that Luke wasn't even in 7, that he just showed up at the end and was like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Are you kidding me? They're not going to have Luke Skywalker in a Star Wars movie that's going to be the sequel to Return of the Jedi? How can they do this? Disney and Lucasfilm, it's just like the prequels again. They're ruining everything. Well, no, and then everybody went and saw The Force Awakens. They were like, it was a really good movie. I got episode 8 coming. I'll get Luke Skywalker then. And then he had another year and a half for people to go and form in their head the way they thought Luke should be treated. And what did Rian Johnson do? In my opinion, he created this masterpiece of a film that completed the hero's journey based off of Campbell's works in Act 3, The Return. And when you make good art, a lot of people don't like it. I just wanted to deviate there for a moment because I thought that was fascinating. And I'm curious to get your thoughts. I'm going to get a lot of listener feedback this week. I can already tell. talkshownerd@gmail.com. Also, leave a comment on YouTube. All right. One more thing, and then we're going to get to listener feedback, and then we'll do the after show this week. And the last thing that I want to talk about is this.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Regardless of how you feel about any of these films that you've seen, and again, I'm getting real emotional, I'm getting real deep in this episode this week, but to kind of bookend the podcast before we get to listener feedback, starting off with enjoy every moment that you can when it comes to Star Wars from now until December. Remember that feeling. And remember that feeling that you get when you're going to sit down and watch a brand new Star Wars movie for the first time. Just sit with that and remember that. That's what Star Wars is. For me. It is these next 8 months. It is the joy that I get from these films and what I can share with my wife and my children. But there is no other franchise that can duplicate or compare to what Star Wars does. I'm writing my own series of stories, and it gives me my own sense of enjoyment and satisfaction and excitement and my dopamine hits of crafting this story in my Embark world that I've created. And it's exciting for me to think about how I'm going to close out this trilogy of books and what I have planned for other stories, and that'll be a part of this universe. There'll be Embark stories, and I have a lot of different plans, and I'm feel so blessed that I was able to find this new outlet where I can express my creativity and bring me a little bit closer to what Star Wars does for me, but it still doesn't compare. Just remember that. And when you hear people talk about the prequels, or maybe you don't like The Last Jedi, maybe try to put that aside for just a moment. And I know that one is attached to the other. I know that that's what's tough, is that you go in, you sit down, and the lights go down, and you're waiting for the trailers to end, and you're waiting for the Lucasfilm logo to pop up, and you got your eyes open, regardless of how many spoilers and leaks and how much you know about the film in front of you. You've got that feeling coursing through your veins. And I know that that's a big reason why so many people had a hard time with The Last Jedi, because it just wasn't what they wanted. And I get that. But maybe put away that negativity, and maybe, just maybe, remember what it feels like to go into that theater. And we all get to do that again coming up in December. And to a lesser extent, we'll be able to do that when we sit in the comfort of our homes and watch these new Star Wars movies told by different content creators, like Jon Favreau, right? And whoever does the Cassian Andor series, and eventually Benioff and Weiss, and eventually even Rian Johnson again. And I'll tell you what, I have a lot of, I heard somebody make a comment the other day talking about how they didn't like The Last Jedi and how they saw it 3 times in the theater because they really wanted to like it. I respect that, man. I do. Because sometimes you just don't know. There are movies that I've watched that I hated the first time that I saw it. And then I watched it again and I loved it. Heat. I don't know if you've ever seen the Michael Mann movie Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. Just a crime thriller set in L.A. Oh, just an epic cops and robbers story. I mean, it's really what it is. Like the ultimate cops and robbers story. I remember the first time I saw it in the theaters, I hated it. I was like, gosh, I was like, what in the world did I just watch? I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was the day of the week. I don't know if it was the mood that I was in. I don't know if it was the weather outside, but I went and I watched it again. Love that movie. So I respect those that that have tried to go and take in The Last Jedi and appreciate it for what it was. And, if you didn't, that's cool, too. Maybe if you only saw it once, I would encourage you to go and watch it again. And if you haven't done this, and I'll wrap up with this before we dive into listener feedback this week, but if you haven't done this yet, Film Joy on YouTube. Movies with Mikey. I love this guy. His style is not everybody's cup of tea, but I dig this dude, man. He's really, really good. He's done this piece on The Last Jedi that's just absolutely fantastic. If you haven't seen it before, I definitely want to encourage you to go and check it out. Film Joy, Movies with Mikey, and go and check out his. He's done one on The Force Awakens, which is also great. The Last Jedi one is spectacular. If you hate The Last Jedi, go into it cautiously because you're probably going to be disagreeing with them about a lot of stuff. But, if you're able to keep an open mind and kind of listen to what another fan has to say, I think you'll find it as equally as enjoyable as I have for the 5 or 6 times that I've watched it. He also did a couple of them just about the essence of the Force in Star Wars that are really good. So go and check those out. And again, enjoy these next 8 months. I hope that this podcast and this show will continue to be a part of that. I really, really do. I hope that you'll use this show to be a part of your journey to the Rise of Skywalker and this moment that we're in right now that at the moment we're not going to be able to experience for quite a long time.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
As always, thank you to everybody who has emailed the show and leaves a comment for the show. I really do appreciate it. Even if I don't get to your particular email or comment on the show, rest assured that I have read every single one of them, and I really do appreciate all of you guys that write in. I want to mention as well, and I'll talk more about this in the after show this week, that again, if you want to support the show, go pick up a copy of my science fiction space opera, Embark. I really think you'll like it. And you know what? I'm celebrating this journey to the Rise of Skywalker by just celebrating all things science fiction. It's really kind of brought about a bit of a creative spark, so I've begun work on the final book of the trilogy because of that. I hadn't intended to do that until I got done with the editing and release to Treasure in Darkness, but again, I've got just I got the creative juices flowing, and I'm excited for Star Wars, and so I'm writing some stories, and finishing off my finale, which is going to be big. It's going to be a big book. There's a lot of story left to tell. All right, let's get into it. Abigail wrote, this was a couple of weeks ago, and I got to a part of it, but I wanted to make sure I had enough time to spend on her comments, and so let's go ahead and get into it. I'm in my mid-20s. I grew up with the prequels. Even so, the entire Skywalker saga has always been something really special to me, with its story about love. After seeing the sequels, my love for Star Wars has soured. I'm in love with the characters from all parts of the saga, and the story so far has left me in... I'm sorry, not soured, soared. I screwed that one up, didn't I? Let me back up. I apologize, Abigail. My love for Star Wars has soared. It's flown. It's taken flight. It hasn't soured. My bad. I couldn't have... If I had tried harder to screw that word up, I couldn't have. That was not rad. As for Reylo, or Ben and Rey, as I like to refer to him, I've been 100% on board with them coming together to battle whatever ultimate evil they may face. I'm looking forward to seeing an intervention take place to make this happen. And since I'm a sucker for a romance, as am I am 100% on board with that as well. From the beginning of The Force Awakens, when I heard Lor Santeca say to Ben, the First Order arose from the dark side, you did not, I've since then firmly believed in a redemption arc for Ben. Now, for the good part, my husband and I decided to take a look at Vader's vault, since they will soon be having their May the 4th sale. Upon scrolling through the pages and pages of their sabers, we came across one saber that had me take a second glance, and then a third look up close. This one was named the Light, and I immediately noticed that it has details on it that look exactly like the details from Kylo Ren's crossguard saber. The handle and pommel have many matching details. However, the emitter is much different, as it only contains a single beam on the new saber. What got me is a description below the pictures of the saber that mentioned a young Solo sound font and options for a screen-accurate version, even if this doesn't happen to be something for an upcoming movie. It still brought me a lot of hope and excitement. I couldn't contain it, so I wanted to share it with you in case you hadn't seen it yet. I hadn't. Take a look at the screenshots of both sabers for comparison as one of the new, as well as one of the new sabers descriptions. Okay, so I haven't looked at this yet. I had never even heard of Vader's Vault. So I'm looking right now, and is Vader's Vault, and are these officially licensed Disney products? That'd be my first question, right? Okay. Okay. Okay, actually, I think I may even have a question. I think I may even know what this is, because I'm looking at it right now. All right, so I'm looking at the Kylo Ren's crossguard, and again, I'm just now discovering this. Let me go to the light. The light version, now, I don't know if this is officially licensed Lucasfilm stuff. I will say this, though. This version of the light, this is Kylo Ren's lightsaber that he used in The Last Jedi. And it's $749. Holy cow. Yeah, this looks like the exact lightsaber. That young Solo sound font and screen accurate version. Right, okay, yeah, so this is, okay. So, yeah, this is Ben Solo's lightsaber from The Force Awakens. I'd never seen these before. Regardless of its authenticity about being related to Disney Lucasfilm products, these are pretty... I'm gonna put this in my add to reading list. Do you guys do that? I do add to reading lists. I don't do the bookmarks. I do add to reading. And as I open up my add to reading, I've got a lot of things to read that I haven't read yet. So, all right, thank you, Abigail. That was really cool. I'm glad you. I love the lightsabers. I have the Legacy saber with a detachable blade. I have the limited edition Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope Jedi training remote, and I also have Anakin Skywalker's blue lightsaber. And this would be the one that got cut in half in Attack of the Clones. I have that one too. All right. Bonnie writes this. I haven't seen last week of this week's episode. I think you just dropped one on the fourth. Thanks. I do fear my prediction for Ben Solo was going to come true from recent leaks. It does sound like he is sacrificed for the greater good and does die at the end of the film, just like Anakin. I just cannot look forward to finding out more or even look forward to watching his death on the big screen, even if Adam Driver acts beautifully. A lot of things have changed since then, by the way. It just seems like complete laziness in storytelling if Ben Solo's hero's journey is that similar to Anakin's. A true end to the Skywalker saga, indeed. A sad fan, Bonnie. Bonnie, this is what I'll say. And this is just me. I trust in what these storytellers are going to do, and I think you should try to too. I really do trust that these storytellers are going to put together something that's going to be uniquely special, and if you can, try not to let your headcanon get in the way and ruin the experience for you. Keep yourself open to you see what it is that plays out before you get too worried and annoyed by it. Or do whatever it is you'd like to do. But thank you for the email. I know she's got another one here that we'll share with you in a bit. SJ's wrote in a few for this week. Time will be kind to The Last Jedi. The quality always trumps fan expectation in the end, 10 years from now. Pre-film expectation goes out the window and is completely forgotten about. I think a great plot line would be Ben wants to destroy the First Order and the Resistance. And the whole Palpatine thing throws a huge monkey wrench into those plans, and it's up to Luke, Rey, and Leia to try to convince Ben, stop Ben from completely obliterating the Resistance. Interesting take. Baffled and Deranged writes this. Peter Mayhew will be truly missed. It broke my heart to hear the sad news of his passing. My deepest sympathy goes out to his wife and family for their loss. Peter couldn't have chosen a better replacement to portray the character of Chewbacca in Jonas Suetomo. Let's see. What a rumor to last week's episode. And they mentioned that I can't sing when I was doing Whitesnake last week. Yeah, I know I wasn't really trying. I mean, I couldn't really sing Whitesnake if I tried. But, give me a good Michael Blueberry tune, and I'm all over it. You are far... Sorry. The way you explained it, what speculation, wow. Continue doing the podcast the way you've been doing them. Not that I don't want to see your adorable face. Girls with Sabers asked that we pass these three on, but I added one more and thought it was fitting. Hashtag Wookiees for Raylo, hashtag Save for Ben Solo, hashtag Raylo for hashtag Bendemption. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Baffled and Deranged. I know you picked up a copy of my book, and I really hope you're enjoying Embark. I really, really do. Be kind. It's my first novel. From what I've heard from the beta readers, when it comes to Book 2, Embark, Treasure in Darkness, overwhelmingly everybody is saying that while they enjoyed Embark, they're liking the follow-up even more. So that's really exciting. Globetrotting Tiffers writes, this great podcast as always. Bendemption is not even a question for me in what I expect the end result for the Rise of Skywalker to be, unless we've been totally misinterpreting what's come before. Even Daisy Ridley hinted in a recent interview that the Rise of Skywalker refers to Kylo/Ben. Now we just get to see how and when that comes about in 9. Oh my goodness, I would love to meet you at Celebration next year. Just need to plan out my life to be able to go. I listen on YouTube, and I'm normally only able to listen to your podcast while I work out, so I wouldn't be able to watch it anyways. So I'm personally fine with the style that you've been doing. Although I would think it would be fun to see your expressions and enthusiasm on special episodes, or just occasionally. I would then make an effort to plan to watch it at that time when I can actually watch the show. So I say both. P.S. Rad is growing on me. Maybe I'll start using it. One of my beta readers, a friend of mine, Ken, dropped it in his comments to reading Embark, Treasure in Darkness that he was surprised that I didn't include Rad in the book. I just love the fact that it's taking hold. And Globetrotting Tiffers, that's rad that you said all that stuff. You're rad. Star Wars is rad. All right. Let's get to... Julianne Luing writes this. R.I.P. Peter, of course. Happy May the 4th to everyone. Another rad episode. And I wouldn't mind watching a live episode. What have I done? I'm Anakin Skywalker. What have I done? You are fulfilling your destiny. Henceforth you shall be known as Rad Vader. I'm sorry. All right. Oh, all right. The Color of Caramel writes this. A saga that has become a 3-act with 3 acts in them. I can see if you step back and really look at it, right? Let's see. Snoke wants Kylo to bring her to him. So yeah, he was pulling his punches because Kylo Ren has a mean downsizing, has a mean downswing as Finn realized. All right, thank you, The Color of Caramel. Let's see. Rob Kroll writes this. Honestly, Matt Smith more looking for young/real Snoke than host for Emperor. Who knows? We'll see. I hadn't heard that before, and that's interesting. I like that idea. He's kind of an odd-looking fellow, and so was Snoke. That would be interesting to see him as a young Snoke. Skydrathic writes this. 3 acts in a trilogy? Yes. But didn't Girls with Sabers take that from George Lucas himself? They might have. I don't know. There's an interview where he says that word for word. He looks at it like a 3-act plays. Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Skydrathic. I really do appreciate it. Let's see. Silver Maiden. 42240 writes this. I am happy with whatever JJ decided to do because I trust the story, and you said it best when you said it. Whatever happens to me, it's canon, it's history, and it's just what happened. However, I'm a bit disappointed if the details of this leak are true, and I'm going to keep this somewhat vague. This sounds a bit more like shot-for-shot knockoff of Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter. My love for those books and movies are second only for my love of Star Wars, and the details seem to match up too much. You know what? Here's the thing about that, too. That's an interesting take, especially if these are people, if the rumor, and I won't get into it now for those that skipped it last week, but I think a lot of that could be that, people see some details of the story and they try to put the pieces together, and then your mind kind of fills in the blanks, kind of like how memory works. I don't know if you know this or not, but like people get into the most auto accidents within a certain mile radius of their home, and it's because the way our brain works and the way memory works isn't how we think. Our brain actually fills in the gaps of what we're used to seeing when we visit a particular place over and over and over again. And therefore, if a new element is introduced into our line of sight that our brain isn't used to seeing there often at all, that's when an accident occurs. And so if you're used to turning onto your street and almost 99% of the time there's never an automobile or a person there, and then suddenly there is, your brain is slower to react because it already filled in the gap of what it was going to see coming up in just a matter of milliseconds. So in this same way, if your brain is suddenly filling in to connect these stories, you could be pulling from other franchises and stories that you've seen before without even realizing it. Thank you so much for the comment. Case S writes this: I wonder if the Emperor will try and convince Kylo that he can bring Han Solo back from the dead. Ooh. That's really interesting. I dig that. All right, Bonnie wrote back and said, last week before listening to your podcast, I expressed how sad I was yet again that it appears that Ben Solo may not make it to the end of the film alive, right? Well, I have to say that I love your theory. See, look, I brought Bonnie back from the brink. Bonnie's been brought back from the brink. That's really hard to say. You know what that is? That's rad. Thanks, Bonnie. She says, thanks for giving me hope. No, thank you. She was one of my beta readers for Embark, too. I was very much appreciative of that. She gave me some very good, healthy commentary. Disney Desi writes this: my speculation is not that Kylo/Ben who gets the mask put back together. Instead, it's Matt Smith or Hux posing as Kylo. Could see that. Let's see. I'm going to skip over Skydrathic Road again, but this is a little bit too close to the mark for the leak that we had that 1 week, last week's episode. So I read your comment, and yeah, it's good. I just don't want to give away too much for people that may not know about that. So thank you for the comment, though. I appreciate it. All right. Where are we at? Just a couple more here. Andrea F. writes this: a live version of the show would be awesome. No worries, though, if you decide to keep a format like it is now. I will definitely keep listening. I love hearing your insights and thoughts. You have a fun, positive show that makes me excited for Star Wars. Thank you for that, Andrea. I appreciate it. All right, let's go to Anthea Gaia. I really hope these leaks are true. Hold on one second. Okay, I paused the show briefly because Anthea was, again, talking about the leak, and I want to keep that somewhat benign for those that may have skipped it. She does, though, however, mention the recent update in the Disney schedule for the Star Wars film, so let's go ahead and address that. Let's see. This might be a comment to wait until your next show, but I just heard that Rian Johnson's trilogy may be canceled. I have to say that I will be really disappointed if that's true. I love the story he put together in The Last Jedi and the risks he took, and was hoping for some more Star Wars content from him. I'm hoping it's just on hiatus and not canceled. I'd be really disappointed if Disney is only doing this because of the vocal haters of The Last Jedi. I'm going to address this in just 1 second. I want to grab one more comment and then get into a little bit of it to wrap the show up before we get to the after show this week. Christina writes this: am I the only one who doesn't trust D.O.? That's the new droid, right? Saw in the trailer. They showed a celebration. BB-8 was cute enough. Why would he need to be out-cuted in the third film? It's too late to get attached to a new droid unless D.O. is actually a spy. It doesn't look like he has many functions. He's basically a camera on wheels. He's shaped like a lamp, so maybe he sheds light on Rey and Kylo. Plus, D-O, D-I-O, means God, and God sees all. I don't know. I just don't trust it. Another big fan. Thanks always for the great content. You know what? Here's what I find interesting. That droid is not really getting much of a reaction. There was like zero reaction from anybody on stage for Dio when he came out on Celebration. I'm not knocking the droid. I'm just saying. There was very little reaction. He's super simple. And I think that lends some credibility to what Christine is saying. I'm thinking this droid must play some level of significance. And I don't know. I agree, though. There's something about the droid that doesn't sit well. Because unless it just happens to be just a new addition and it's not supposed to be that big of a deal, but it just seems like nobody's really going, that looks really rad. Like, it's not BB-8, and BB-8 looked rad, right? BB-9E looked rad. Dio? And she's right. It looks like a wheelbarrow wheel with a lamp on top, painted white and green. Not to say I won't get the action figure. Right. All right, let's get back. Let me make one more comment, and then we'll wrap up the show, and we'll get to the after show this week. But to that, I heard that Rian Johnson's trilogy was canceled. A lot of look, and I know what it is you're referring to, and I'll be honest, I get a little bummed when people do that, because you go, and I mentioned this at the start of the show, but you go and watch some of these shows, and it really is the definition of clickbait. When you listen to what they actually have to say, they don't really know. I heard from a source, they said that was the Benioff and Weiss movies that were going first. They don't know what's happening with Rian Johnson, and that turns into Rian Johnson movies are canceled. You know, I don't know. It's neither here nor there. I know a lot of people make a lot of money off the YouTube videos, and I'm not even talking, look, there's a different level. There's the Mike Zero level where he's just lying to everybody, right? And people go along with it, and he makes a lot of money, and if that's what people want to go and hit the views and give that dude money, they can go for it. I'm not gonna. But then there's sort of that middle ground where people get really edgy with their titles to suck people in, and look, hey, that's maybe I've done that too, so I shouldn't, he who lives in a glass Death Star shouldn't try to pull off a holdover maneuver. I don't, or something, right? What have I done? But I don't think Rian Johnson's trilogy is canceled. I think that Rian Johnson is still going to be heavily involved in Star Wars content in the future, probably making some films and being a big part of that. That's why he's in New York with Pablo Hidalgo and other people from Star Wars. That's why Kathleen Kennedy said that he was working directly with Benioff and Weiss, and they were collaborating together. I firmly believe that we'll see some Star Wars content from Rian Johnson in the future. And if for some reason we don't, we will always have The Last Jedi. And I am totally fine with that. I love that movie. All right, thank you so much for checking out the show this week. If you don't stick around for this week's after party, that's totally okay. But as I've said, I hope that you will take a moment to support the podcast by going to, right now, go to Amazon.com and pick up a copy of my science fiction space opera novel, Embark. I really do think that you will enjoy it, especially as a Star Wars fan, even if you're not an avid reader. For Earth, the end is near, and a reluctant hero and the girl he loves hold the power to save humanity's future. That's the tagline for the first book. I will share with you the synopsis that has not been fully released publicly for Treasure in Darkness coming up, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in the after show. So I won't waste a lot of time here. But if you are looking for a way to support the podcast, again, I would encourage you to please go to Amazon.com, search for Embark, and pick up a copy of Book 1 of my science fiction space opera. $2.99, $2.99 for the ebook, and then $11.99 for the paperback. You get the ebook for free, and then various prices on the 11.5-hour audiobook narrated by me and produced by me. It's all available there on Amazon.com. Search Jon, Jon Justice. All right, the after party's coming up, but first, here's Obi-Wan, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
The Force will be with you, always.
My nerd world.
There has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
All right, and welcome to the My Nerd World After Party. I'm not going to be doing this on every single show. This just provides a good opportunity for me to add my thoughts on a couple of different items not related directly to Star Wars. And what I wanted to talk about briefly was Avatar. I know that Avatar takes a lot of heat, regardless of its box office. And I agree with a lot of people that Avatar just didn't seep into the pop culture the way that other franchises have. And I've heard all the complaints and the comparisons, because it really is sort of a straight up Fern Gully. I will say this, though. I'm really excited for these Avatar films. I really love the first Avatar movie. And James Cameron has got this way of teeing up, right, I'm going to do this new brave thing in cinema, and everyone's like, whatever, dude, okay, what? You're going to have 10-foot tall cat people, and they're going to be blue? All right, cool. And then he absolutely goes and delivers on it. And as a Star Wars fan and as a science fiction fan, I'm excited to be able to get into whatever James Cameron is planning on doing. He has a very unique vision and has been able to bring something special to the films that he makes. And the fact that Disney now owns this franchise and they are going to be trading off, as it stands right now, year after year in December, these Avatar films with Star Wars, I think they know they've got something really special. And I am really, really excited to see what it is that James Cameron has to cook up when it comes to these films. And I know he's talked about performance capture underwater, and recently sat down and watched Aquaman for the second time, saw it in the theater, watched it at home. And you know what? I kind of enjoyed it more. I'm a bigger fan of the second half of that film. It's bonkers. If you've seen Aquaman is just flat out bonkers. That movie's nuts. Like, whatever. I mean, the creative individuals behind that film and what it was that they did, it's like, holy cow, you guys, like, went for it. And a lot of it works. Some of it doesn't. Okay? I prefer my sci-fi as science fiction in a space opera form. But there was a lot in that film that worked. And what I actually thought was really interesting about Aquaman was the battle scene towards the end, or at the end of the film, and a lot of the underwater work that was done throughout the movie. And taking what they did, adding James Cameron, and then the Avatar universe into it, I am really, really excited to see what James Cameron is going to do. So I just wanted to throw that in there with the after show this week, after party, talk a little bit about Avatar. If you want to comment and drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. If I get enough responses, maybe I'll do another after show to next week's My Nerd World of Star Wars podcast. If you want to comment and share your thoughts on it, I wanted to add too that I actually I didn't lift, but I wanted a title for the stories that I was writing to be something that I could use. You can't do Star Wars and anything with any sort of combination of those words. It's just a ripoff. And I really liked what James Cameron did with having this one word title of Avatar. I really dug that. I thought it was bold, and you know immediately what it is when you say Avatar. And embark is just a word that's not used all that often, but it immediately, sort of, at least in my mind, brings up this idea of potential adventure, embarking on a voyage, embarking on vacation, embarking on a trip. And the first book in my Embark series is really about that. It's about humanity having to go and embark on this adventure. And I used Avatar as sort of my example of, man, is there a one word that can really capture what it is that I'm trying to evoke? And it was embark. So, I'll take just a moment. I have an ad that I put together to describe the book. So, for you new listeners who haven't heard this before, this is what the book is all about. And then when I'm done, if you've read Embark, then certainly stick around. If you haven't read Embark, then I'm going to give you a little bit of a pause before I share this with you. But I do have the book blurb for Book 2 that's currently in the editing process right now. My beta readers have come back. And the reviews have been great, and the response has been great. And I'm making some adjustments here and there to the story, but the story worked. And it really is designed to be like the original trilogy of Star Wars, not with content, but in what it did. So where Star Wars A New Hope sort of set up this adventure, Empire Strikes Back was a more smaller personal story, and then you lead to the epic conclusion with Return of the Jedi. The same thing with the sequel trilogy and what we're expecting with Episode 9 when you look back at introducing the characters in The Force Awakens, sort of the smaller sort of personal story, and bringing Rey and Kylo together in The Last Jedi, and then what we're going to see in The Rise of Skywalker. I'm designed this trilogy very much the same way. Embark is a larger epic tale, a longer story where we get a lot of the background of Earth in the future and what it's going through, leading to the grand finale. Treasure in Darkness is a little shorter. It's a much more personal story that sets up what is going to be the epic conclusion in Book 3. So for those that haven't heard this yet, here is a bit about what Embark Book 1 is all about. For Earth, the end is near. Only a reluctant hero and the girl he loves have the power to save humanity's future. It's the not-so-distant future, and car culture is replaced by air and space flight, made possible by two of Earth's largest corporations. Flight mechanic Taft Guardia spends his free time racing through the skies with his three best friends and the girl he longs to be with, headstrong Keith Amaro. With the planet on the brink of an industrial apocalypse, a powerful and ruthless corporate madman, Sint Argum, moves to exploit the disaster with his covertly created military. When Taft, Keitha, and their friends uncover a shocking secret, Sint Argum will stop at nothing to find them. Time on Earth is running out, but with the help of a ragtag group of young pilots, they'll fight for humanity's future and survival among the stars.
My nerd world.
And what I did with Embark was I really included a ton of Easter eggs of things that I love. My affinity for 90s rock music and current popular music and alternative rock music. The book was written around the same time of The Last Jedi, pre and post, and also Ready Player One. So there's some direct nods to that book and that film because I adore the book and the film as well. So if you haven't picked up Embark, go to Amazon.com, and again, the ebook, the paperback, and the audiobook are all available right now. $2.99 for the ebook. You can get the ebook for free with a purchase of the paperback for $11.99, and then the audiobook, you can get it free with an Audible trial, but also there's a couple of different price ranges depending on what you sign up for. I'm pretty sure you can get the ebook and the audiobook for like $7.50 combined together if you go to Amazon. If you go to Amazon.com. All right. So for those that have read Embark, just as a bit of a bonus before we wrap up the after show this week, for those that have read it, I have the synopsis, the book blurb that I've written up. This might change, but for those that have read Embark, stick around. I'll give you a bit of a background on what Treasure in Darkness is about. Should be out in the next month and a half. For everybody else, thank you so much for checking the show out. So I will close one more time with a drop, and then I will share with you the book blurb for Embark, Treasure in Darkness, Book 2.
Fulfill your destiny.
And again, if you haven't read Embark, you might want to skip this because spoilers await. Earth is nothing but a memory. 6 years have passed since the former flight mechanic turned reluctant hero Taft Guardia, headstrong Keith Amaro, and the young Ultra Raiders launched their crushing assault on Mars against the military might of D-Corp and the evil Sint Argum. No one has seen or heard anything from the inhabitants of the Red Planet since. Most of Earth's survivors have settled on Zima and the surrounding planets orbiting the red dwarf star Proxima Centauri. When the first search and salvage mission arrives at the space graveyard near Saturn, they are threatened by three unknown, well-trained, lethal attackers equipped with advanced new technology. Is this the return of the ruthless Sint Argum and D-Corp, or a new enemy emerging? Taft, Keitha, and their friends must now unravel the mystery and protect their home on Zima before it's too late. Secrets will be revealed in Embark, Treasure in Darkness, Book 2, a new series by Jon Justice Lojudice. All right, so that'll be out here in the next couple of months. It continues its editing phase. I really hope that you will pick it up and share it with friends. All right, that completely wraps up the show this week. We'll be back next week with another My Nerd World, the Star Wars podcast. Until then, may the Force be with you always.